It's an everyday thing. It's an everyday thing. It's an everyday thing when you let your nuts hang.
Did my ex think NBC and the Today Show hired my black ass as a fluke? Like, did he really think I was the DEI hire? Do you know how white the inside of a newsroom is? No, baby, I does this, and I'm quite good at it too. I am a seasoned journalist. I have a master's degree in journalism. I literally studied how to find out. I get paid to find out. I bought this house by finding out. Did you not think I would find out that you were married the entire time that we were together? Baby, I am a journalist. What didn't click? Do I need to start an intro to journalism class? Cause, child. Okay, so here we go. Part one of how I found out my boyfriend of over a year was married the entire time. And yes, this will include texts, and it will also include photos. Because as Beyonce says, baby, I am the visuals. And one thing I always will do, I will always keep those receipts. So as a real journalist does, we are going to start with the facts. So for one, this man is Jamaican. For two, he works in law enforcement. Now I know that is a wild combination. And believe me, if I did not have to disclose that, in order for this to all make sense, I wouldn't. But those details are important. Okay, so I'm not going to say his real name, obviously. So in that case, let's call him Junie. And for the record, if anyone happens to figure out who this is, I genuinely don't care, because if you don't want people to know that you're a terrible person, don't do terrible things. And when you do terrible things to another person, you don't get to say how that person will in turn react. And for me, I'm choosing to react by healing out loud. And hopefully in the process, I help someone spot the signs that I missed so they can figure this all out a lot earlier than I did. Another thing, you're not gonna see a bunch of tears during this story time because all the tears have been cried. I cried for legitimately 2 weeks straight, 24/7 for 2 weeks straight. Like, to the point where I was supposed to go on a cruise with my cousin and our friend during that time. I literally could not get on the boat. So no more tears. He is not worth my tears anyway. And no, this won't be a 50-part series, but it will be detailed. And I'll try to get through those details as quick as I can, as concise as I can, but they're essential because I have to set the scene of how this all happened. Okay, so let's get to the story. Starting with how I met this man. So I actually met him about 3 years ago when I was going through it with my ex before him. I met him on Bumble. A dating app will truly never see me again. So yeah, so I met him during a time where me and my previous ex were like literally not speaking at all. Let's call that ex Marlon. Okay, so Junie and I met on Bumble. We talked on the phone and then we decided to meet at a local like breakfast coffee spot. Okay, so my first impressions of Junie. Now, if I'm being totally honest, he actually wasn't my type. He was like, I guess like a little more like nerdier or whatever than like the kind of man that I usually dated. He didn't have any facial hair. Like, you know, I like my mans with, you know, something. And his fit was like, I don't know, it was just like very like, I don't know, kind of nerdy. I don't know. I don't even know if I would call it like tech bro. It's just like, I don't know, it's just not what I was really used to. Just very like bland kind of. But he is 6'5". I'm 5'11". And he comes off like very intelligent, can totally hold a conversation. And I just like really enjoyed talking to him because, like I said, we had spoke on the phone before we met in real life. Part one left off with our first time meeting in real life. And again, I really, really liked talking to him up until that point. We had spoke on the phone, and the good conversations we had on the phone definitely carried over in person. And I remember he said that I was even prettier in person, so bonus points for him that day. So we continued to talk. He took me on a few more dates. We went to like this really nice steakhouse. And then I remember the third date, we went to this like local Mexican spot. And it was actually that date in particular where I was like, okay, this, you know, he's yeah. Because we had just ordered guacamole, put our orders in, we're just about to eat, and I got a call from my son's school that he missed the bus and that I had to come pick him up. Now, Junie picked me up for that date, so I didn't have my car with me, and like we couldn't both leave. And obviously I'm not gonna send a random man to pick up my son from school. So he was like, just take my Jeep. I was like, really? So I took his Jeep. He stayed at the restaurant with the chips and guac. Went to get my son, brought my son back to my apartment at the time, and then came back to the restaurant with his Jeep. And I just thought it was dope that he was like, yeah, whatever, and just get your son with my car. He had no clue about my driving skills, you know? But yeah, just like a really nice, like caring person. So now, with that being said, I did recognize within myself that I wasn't really ready to like jump into anything, right? And like, as much as I tried to like make him my type, he just really actually wasn't really that for me, if I'm being honest. So like, while I did enjoy speaking to him a lot, and I did enjoy going with him out to eat and stuff, I knew that during that time, for me, it wasn't gonna go anywhere. I do recognize for him that he 1000% wanted it to go somewhere, but it really actually just came to a point where I was like, so we basically just like, after a little bit, just stopped really communicating. And again, that was mainly because of me. Another reason too is like, I also knew that like I wasn't fully done with my ex at the time, in the sense of like feelings weren't fully resolved. We were not communicating at all, but my feelings weren't resolved. And so like Junie, I couldn't really like focus on that, like, just if I'm being honest. And for better or for worse, I just have like a one-track mind really when it comes to like dating. I can only really pay attention and pour into like one person at a time. And so the energy that I would have maybe given Junie at the time, I just like really couldn't. So fast forward, I did end up getting back together with my ex, right? And so when that happened, Junie and I did not speak at all, like absolutely nothing. He would like text me once in a while, like out of the blue, just like asking how I was, but like it was truly nothing more than that. So now fast forward, it's probably like a year and a half maybe after, and my ex and I are done. So like I had to go completely no contact with that man. And I was really on some like, let me just be by myself, pour into myself, don't want to jump into anything at all. It's just going to be about me for the rest of this summer. I started like walking every single day, like 5 miles a day, just like getting myself together, getting like my confidence back up, just, you know, everything. So one day I'm on the track and I was like, you know what? Now that me and Marlon are like done, let me just like, I don't know, check in with Junie, see how he's doing. Because like I said, I really enjoyed communicating with him. Like, you know, he was cool. He was really cool. And like, I had no intentions of jumping into any type of relationship whatsoever. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know, maybe I will see him a little bit differently now that I'll have like more brain space to like pour a little more like energy into, you know, whatever. So I was on the track one day and I was like, let me just text him, hit him up. So I did. So let's talk about how we ended up reconnecting after we didn't speak for like a year and a half. So like I said, I was on the track that day and I was like, you know what? Let me just text him. So I did. And because I was the one who was like responsible for us really not speaking, I didn't really know if he was going to respond at all or what his response was going to be, but he did respond. It was just like a friendly, like, hey, thought of you. Hope you're having a nice summer. So he responded fairly quickly, like maybe like 15, 20 minutes later. And he was just saying that I also crossed his mind and he was going to hit me up too. He asked how my home buying process was going. I was telling him it was still crazy. Then he tells me that unfortunately his grandfather passed away. This is important. So after we catch up a bit, I got the impression he wanted to like meet. So I was like, did you want to do something? And then he goes, you know, I'll drop anything to come see you. I was like, oh. Then he's like, that's why I always check in with you. I told you that like, even though we didn't speak, like once in a blue moon, he would just like say hi, see how I was. So like I said, I was on the track when I texted him. So I was like, do you want to meet today or tomorrow? He was like, either works for him. And I was like, let me just confirm, because honestly, I didn't know if I was going to still have the energy after walking 5 miles that day. So we decided to go that night to this Caribbean spot. And then we confirmed he was picking me up that night. Okay, so this second time around, meeting him again in person was definitely a way different vibe, I will say, than when we initially met the first time a year and a half prior to that. And that's for a couple of reasons, because remember I was saying I wasn't emotionally free from the person I was dating before him. Now I was. Also too, he looks different. So he had definitely put on some weight, but like good weight in my opinion. Like he was he was like a little too skinny before. Not only that, so we're at the restaurant, I'm across from him. I noticed he has some like facial hair now. You know, it wasn't much, but before he didn't have any, and I already told you, I need something. So I was like, potential. Okay, potential. But also too, he started like talking about, you know, like his grandfather and what was going on with like his family life. And we just kind of like connected in a different way than we connected the first time around. But again, I had no intentions of this developing into any type of relationship whatsoever. It was truly just like nice to see him. But at the same time, I was like, okay, this definitely feels different. And like as the night went by, I was more like, okay, I definitely don't want to rush into anything or whatever, but you know, if he pursued whatever, I'll give it a chance this time. And then from that night on, it was off to the races. And I am not exaggerating whatsoever, because like 2 weeks after that, he was like, let's take a trip together. And we went to DC. I was honestly like really kind of nervous about it, because like the first go around, there was like no intimacy whatsoever. And not that I thought he had like any expectations or whatever. He was always like super respectful. It was just, you know. So here we are in DC together. The drive down also was just really fun. We went to like all the monuments, to Frederick Douglass's house. We went to the African American Museum. We went to like Old Ebbitt Grill, and the hotel we stayed at was like super nice. We actually ran into NBA player Gilbert Arenas in the elevator on our way back to our room. It was just like a really good time. We like ate so much and talked just like about family and a whole bunch of stuff. And one thing in particular is me saying how I always wanted to go to Jamaica because my dad's from Jamaica. I've never been there. And obviously Junie is from Jamaica. So after the weekend, we make our way back to Long Island. It's still summer, so, you know, we spent some time outside together. And the thing is, like, he wasn't really like an outside person, but because I liked to do things, he would do things with me. So then, remember how I said we were talking about how I wanted to go to Jamaica? Just a few weeks after that, he sends me this. This man sends me a whole planned out itinerary to take me to Jamaica. Paid for, planned. I was actually in shock. So in October, we went to Jamaica. So we left off with him sending me a fully paid itinerary to Jamaica. And sure enough, we went to Jamaica. All right, before I get into the trip, I really just need y'all to see the room that we stayed in. So Junie booked the Hyatt Ziva in Montego Bay, and this room was absolutely gorgeous. So this was the butler suite. We didn't have a butler, but this was the butler suite, and he did his big one. He really did. There was just like so much space, very clean, and it was just the two of us. So you see here, I'm walking out to the balcony, and you can see the main area with like the pool and everything, and highly recommend the Hyatt Ziva. Good time. All right, so before I get into the trip again, I just want to address some of y'all's comments that the first red flag should have been that he's Jamaican. A lot of y'all left that comment. All right, let me get into the backstory. So according to him, he left Jamaica when he was like 17 or 18 and moved there and came to live on Long Island, which is where I'm obviously born and raised. Now, that story is actually very similar to my own father, who is also Jamaican. He grew up in Bluefields in Jamaica and also London, and then came to America to live in New York a little before I was born. So I'm technically half Jamaican too. My mother is Black American. Now, however, my dad did not raise me, so I was not raised Jamaican. This is my dad, actually. Jamaican as hell. So even though my dad didn't raise me, I did grow up knowing his family as a kid. Fast forward now though, my dad and I are actually super close now. He moved to California a few years ago, so this is us in Cali. So yeah, so I'm also Jamaican, technically half Jamaican. In addition to that, my ex before Junie, Marlon, was also from Jamaica. He came here when he was like, what did he say, like 15 or 16, and then moved to Harlem. Now, the difference with Marlon and Junie is that Marlon did a whole lot too. However, I was not surprised by the things that Marlon ultimately ended up doing. Junie was different. And honestly, I actually didn't even know that Junie was Jamaican right away. Because at this point, he has a pretty like solid Long Island accent. And unless you're around people who are Jamaican, you wouldn't really catch on to like certain ways that he pronounces stuff. I did, but I didn't know that he was Jamaican until he like actually confirmed it himself. And then like, obviously, as I got to know him and spend more time around him, whenever like his mom would call or whatever, he would go into like full-blown patois, you know, whatever. But I didn't even really know he was Jamaican until he confirmed it himself. But really, it was just his like demeanor and our conversations and the way that he treated me. He treated me really well. That's why I thought he beat the allegations. I feel like I was wrong. And like in terms of demeanor, I mean, he's just very like calm, level-headed, doesn't yell, has never called me out my name. Just a very chill, calm person. He also has like a very extensive vocabulary, just like very intelligent. He told me he has his bachelor's, his master's, you know, I have my master's. You know, he's a homeowner, bought his house in 2017. Like, you know, just a very like chill, level-headed man. All right, so back to the vacation. We stayed there for 5 days, had our little coordinating fits. I think this was actually the first night that we got there. This is over at Pier 1, cute. And so like we didn't stay in the resort the whole time, we ventured out. But like most of all, we just really got a chance to like really connect on like a deeper level. And I had expressed to him like, I am genuinely shocked that you are doing all this, like, you know. And he was basically like, girl, I am in love with you. Oh. And to be honest, I genuinely pretty much fell in love with him on this trip. And ever since, this super duper serious relationship, like, you are my person, I am your person, period. Like, I don't play about you, you don't play about me. But he already felt like this before the trip, going into this trip. To the point where this man even took me out to St. Anne, to a place where they're building a whole bunch of new houses. And we were up in there in the construction office. He was showing me which house he was getting built and this and that, whatever. Saying like, yeah, when it's done, we'll be here all the time. You know, like planting the seeds of like, okay, we're gonna be doing this life thing together for a very long time. Now, during this trip, I also kind of like opened up to him about like the previous relationship that I was in. Up until then, I didn't really tell him too many details because at this point, I just don't believe in leading with like any kind of trauma. Like that didn't have anything to do with him. You know, we were talking about that. He also was telling me about like his dad and stuff, and we just got into like the ethics of like being in a relationship. And he was saying how like he is one of many siblings on his dad's side. On his mom's side, he just has his little brother, but on his dad's side there's like a bunch of siblings, and he just made it a point to say like that is not the life that he ever would want for him, and because certain things happen, he would never want to, you know, like duplicate that as a man for whoever he ultimately ends up with. So it was just a lot of talks about like faithfulness and loyalty and just like being good people to each other. So, you know, basically this is like where it was all established like, yeah, we go together real bad. Okay, so part 4 left off with us in Jamaica and us fully establishing that we go together real bad, locked in. All right, so we left Jamaica, we're back on Long Island, and like everything is progressing fine. There was truly never a week where we didn't do like a nice date night. We talked on the phone every single day, literally for hours. I work from home, and as I said before, he works in law enforcement, so he's in his truck all day. If he was like close by, he'd like stop and see me. Yeah, things were good. And like here's some of the texts he would send me, just like really sweet. Here's another one. And here's another one where he was at his mom's house and he said that his mom was like, you know, who got you smiling? According to him, his mom lived pretty close to him, I guess like 10 minutes. Still in the same town where he lived when he first came to America when he was 17, 18. And he told me that she's a doctor, which I thought was pretty dope. So as you can see, things are pretty good. And like one day we even had a conversation. He was like, if we didn't stop speaking for that year and a half, we would have been married by now. He was like, I met you and you were like perfect. That I was just like everything that he was looking for. So he always used to joke like, whenever we get married that me ghosting him was gonna go on the vows. So anyways, like I said, we never missed a date night ever for any of the weeks. So one night we decided to go out to Nassau County. Now this night in particular was like maybe like 2 or 3 weeks after we got back from Jamaica. So we made a reservation for this place called Dunn's River Lounge, and it's a Jamaican spot in Rockville Center. Really, really good. So we get there. This is where I went wrong. So, you know, of course, I have to get rum punch. The rum punch was 10 out of 10. And it was so good that I took this, I think it was a boomerang, and I posted it, you see, on my Instagram story and tagged the location of exactly where we were at in real time. Yeah, mistake. And here's just a picture of the food, you know, rice and peas, curry, chicken, like 10 out of 10. So we're at the spot chilling, the DJ comes out. You know, I think I'm on like my second rum punch at that point. The food is done. I was about to get some dessert, you know, having a great time. I looked to my left just to make sure that my bag was still on the chair. When I looked to the left, I almost felt like I saw a ghost. I instantly felt all of the like anything rush out of my face. I turn and look to Junie and he's like, what's wrong? I was like speechless. He's like, Mary, what is wrong? Tell me why. And this is about probably an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours after we had got there. Tell me why when I looked to the left, I see Marlon. Yes, Marlon the ex. Yeah. So now I told y'all I had to go completely no contact with Marlon. So I was like, yeah, forget dessert. I need to get out of here right now. Right now. But then I was like, you know what? I can't let this man see me sweat like that. So I took deep breaths, you know. My heart was like literally racing, heart racing. But I'm like, you know what? So
Marlon stalking.
he got the check. He paid, put my jacket, you know, whatever on. And I was just going to walk out the restaurant. But I was like, you know what? Nah. So Marlon was towards the entrance. Junie is walking behind me. And at the last second, I was like, yeah, I'm going to say something. So I'm walking. I go right up to Marlon's table, put my hands in his back, and lean down and say, just so you know, he's in law enforcement. And then I got up. I looked at the girl that he was with, continued to walk out the restaurant, and then flipped, you know, as I walked by. And that was it. I'm truly in utter disbelief.
He
Now,
was on a
when we
date.
got to Junie's Jeep, I couldn't control it anymore. I freaked out so bad. I started like hysterical crying. It was bad. I called my best friend on FaceTime, telling her what happened, because she knows the whole story, obviously. She knows everything that happened with Marlon. And like I said, up until that point, I hadn't really told Junie everything. Because like, at this time, I just don't believe in leading with trauma when you're starting something new. It had nothing to do with Junie. I just wanted to leave that where it was. But now that he is seeing my reaction and that person has now kind of like been brought into our space, now I kind of have to like spill the beans and tell him really everything. So I did. I told Junie pretty much everything that happens. And so he was fully aware of everything that I had dealt with. And that included cheating. That included lying. He fully understood what I had to kind of like overcome to get to the place I was now. So then he took matters into his own hands, addressed that situation exactly how it needed to be addressed, and really like took on a role as like really like my protector in this whole situation, and it just made me feel like so incredibly safe. And it also felt like sort of like a weight lifted off my shoulder, knowing that he now knows like the full story of the things that I've just like been through, fully acknowledging that he would never ever do any of those things to me, that he would never be disrespectful, he would never cheat, never. All right, so after the whole restaurant situation, because of the way he handled that, I felt like I could literally trust this man with my entire life. And even though we were locked in before, it was like, no, yeah, okay, this man is my whole husband. And like, I've never been one of those girls who like just needs to get married for the sake of getting married. But this was like very clearly the direction that we were going in. And those conversations were absolutely happening now. And the timeline that we set was like basically within a year. So we continue to do what we do. Here's us going to DC again. Here we are at the park at 14th, a brunch spot in DC. Winter in DC, I loved this dress. Springtime in DC. And every time we went to DC, we would get a hotel. But then always for the last night, we would drive to Maryland to stay at one of his best friend's houses. Let's call that best friend Jordan. All right, so during this time, I was in the midst of my home buying process. And if you've ever been through that before, it is so incredibly frustrating. And so now he already owns his home. He bought it in 2017. And so the plan was that since I have my son and I'm for sure keeping him in his school district, that once I was able to get an offer accepted and able to close in a house, that Junie would rent out his house and then come live with me and my son. So it almost started to feel like more pressure to get an offer accepted because I was just ready to like start this life. And here's where the additional pressure came in. All right, so remember how when Junie and I first reconnected, we started talking about like everything that was going on and what we missed in the year and a half that we weren't speaking. And he had told me that unfortunately his grandfather had passed away like really recently, right before we reconnected. Now, what he told me is that when he came to America from Jamaica, he came here with his grandfather. So the story was that his mother left Jamaica when he was a baby, came to the States, New York, to go to med school. So Junie was in Jamaica with his grandparents as a baby. His mother ended up having another child who is his little brother. He went to Jamaica. Then his grandmother ended up bringing the little brother to New York, Long Island. And then a few years later, when his mother was able to bring Junie to the States, Long Island, is when Junie came to Long Island with his grandfather. So Junie like finished high school or whatever, went to college, did a few different jobs, got into law enforcement, bought his house, and then he said his grandparents came to live with him in his house. So he was like super duper duper close to his grandparents, and his grandparents were married for a very, very, very long time. So now with all of that being said, I never went to his house initially because his grandfather had just passed away and he didn't want to be like really insensitive to his grandmother, who's just dealing with losing her husband of decades. And I'm not gonna be like, well, screw your grandma, like I'm coming to your house. No, like that was totally understandable to me, especially because you can tell he deeply, deeply cared about his grandparents. And then there was me on the other hand. I have my son. I didn't exactly want to bring a man around my son that soon in that capacity. So I wasn't going to Junie's house, but I also didn't bring Junie to my house, and he definitely didn't spend the night because my son, right? So we're entering the spring in this same situation, right? I'm putting in like offer after offer on houses that I like. None of my offers are getting accepted. Houses are like going way overbid, bidding wars every time, just chaos. So as expected, I'm starting to get frustrated at that point because like I want to spend like a different kind of time together, you know? And he's basically just like, just be patient, be patient. And like he would never get mad at me if I brought it up, but I did feel like a bit of frustration. So then I just like tried not to really bring it up. And then I finally got an offer accepted. So that happened in June or July. So we were like, all right, finally. So like I said, the plan was for him to rent out his house and then come live here with my son and I. Now, in order for him to do that, he told me that he did have to renovate the inside of his house. So once I got the go ahead, that's what he started doing. So he would send me progress pics of like the construction. I would be on the phone next to him while he was like talking to like the solar people. He would send me pictures, videos, all that, right? So I'm like, cool. Then the closing on my house starts to take a little bit longer than I initially thought it was going to take. So while I knew our plans were in progress for us to live together soon, and that was coming along with an engagement and everything, because everything was taking a little bit longer, I did start to get a little frustrated about my initial concerns. Because it's like, I have total respect for like the fact that you care so much about your family and your grandparents and your grandfather. And it's like, trust me, I understand. Because like I told you, I wasn't raised by my father, and the person who stepped in for that role was my grandfather. So I was super duper close to my grandfather as well, which is why I understood. But with that being said, we're talking about living together, marriage, and making plans for all that stuff. It felt like time for me, right? And I just felt like enough time had passed. Like, so then it pretty much shifted from like, I don't want to be insensitive to my grandmother, to I just need to make sure that we are 100%, totally, all this is happening because the next person I bring into my life, into my family's life that way, is going to be the person I am for sure doing all this stuff with. And so here's a text of him explaining this to me. He says he never rushed me into introducing him to anyone, and that he should be allotted the same grace. And then he says, all I have left in this world before you came into my life is my grandma, mom, and little brother. And he says, the next person that crosses the threshold of my door is who I'm marrying. I understand though. So fast forward, I finally closed on my house. He's still doing the construction on his house. So at that point, his house will be ready soon. And in the meantime, he's literally doing everything at my house. Painting, more painting. This man painted every room. Changed the locks, showed my son how to mount his TV, mounted all the TVs, put together my couch, installed all the lighting, including this beauty right here. All of that while still taking time to take me out to dinner. And when I say dinner, I'm not talking diners. I mean like the nicest steakhouses on Long Island. Like this man literally spent thousands. This is at one of my spots called Arlo. And we were there so much that we literally became like cool with the staff, including one of the managers who was also Jamaican. And there aren't many Black people in these spaces, so you see one of us, it's like, oh, okay. And where we're located is actually very relevant. So for people who are not familiar with Long Island, like Long Island is big, but it's not that big, especially if you're born and raised on Long Island. Everyone in Suffolk County pretty much knows everyone in Suffolk County. Or at least you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. So like, let me just put this into perspective. So my grandparents were part of the Great Migration, both from the South, grandma from Alabama, grandpa from South Carolina. They both ended up moving to the North, made their roots out to Long Island in 1965. First Black couple on the block to own a home. My mother is one of 7 girls, all went to the same high school. Me and my cousins all went to the same high school. My son is in the same school district. We know pretty much everyone. So now listen to this. So now, of course, some of the people we know are also in law enforcement. And when you're Black in that line of work in Suffolk County, everybody knows everybody. So he knew people who I grew up with. And so Junie, his house is more out east than I live. And one day he mentioned to me that one of his neighbors is from my town. And he was like, I could have sworn I told you that. I'm like, no, you didn't. So he tells me who it is. Yeah, I totally know him. He's older than me, but I do know him. And matter of fact, my best friend's mother is like super close with them, to the point where she had her birthday party at his house, which is very close to Junie's house. And him and that neighbor are pretty close. I was actually going to go to that birthday party with my best friend. I told Junie about this and he was like, yeah, go ahead, have a great time. I never ended up going to that party, but like, if I did, at any point in time, I would have been like, oh yeah, my boyfriend Junie, whatever. And they would have been like, that man has a whole wife. Now, of course, I didn't know any of that at the time. I had no idea that this man was married. And one of the law enforcement officers who I grew up with, he's been to his house in my town. At any point in time, he could have mentioned me or whatever, and the dots would have been connected. There is this one guy who they're also really good friends with who throws like these epic parties every summer, and he lives just a couple houses down from my grandparents' house. Junie has been to those parties with that neighbor from my town. You know, so he was playing it real close. He's been in my town to be at events. Last year for Black History Month, he was out here. Because, you know, in this county, there's not many Black people in his line of work. So the few they have, they're out there on Front Street. He's always at the events. He's always on their social media page. So, like, people know who he is. And when he was with me, he never ever flinched about taking photos, videos. I literally have thousands of pictures of us. We were constantly out in public in my town. My town is like, has a whole bunch of restaurants and bars. And never once did he ever act like he was nervous or whatever to be out there to be seen. Except there was this one time on my birthday, thinking about it now after I know everything, he took me to this restaurant called The Shed. They have like a really good brunch. And I remember we pulled up to The Shed. We get out the car, we start walking to the restaurant. I had on this like really pretty pink dress that I wanted to take pictures of myself outside as like my birthday photo. So we're walking to the restaurant and I see this group of like 3 or 4 white men just speaking. And I see them looking at me and Junie. I'm looking at Junie. Junie is like trying to avoid them at all costs. And then I realized like, oh, these are his coworkers. Now I'm thinking he's trying to avoid these people because like, who wants to talk to your coworkers on your day off, you know? So eventually, like, we go over and say hi to them. And then he like rushed me inside and I ended up taking my pictures inside. I wanted to be outside. And I was like, okay, that was kind of weird. I was actually kind of annoyed. Now I know why he did that. So anyways, I closed on my house. And like I said, the plan was for him to move in once the renovations were done at his house. So his renovations started taking longer than expected. But that didn't really throw me off because like I said, the closing from my house took longer than expected as well. And I know about construction and renovations. It's not always on the timing that is initially portrayed. So at this point, clearly we have like our solid plan. He has made it extremely clear that he intends to ask me to marry him. Like we are without a doubt spending the rest of our lives together. Like there was no question about anything to the point where he was like, yeah, just make sure your nails are done because you don't know when it's going to happen. And it wasn't a matter of like if, it was a matter of just when. And I remember I was like, how do you even know my ring size? And he was like, trust me, there's ways. You know me, I'm a nosy journalist. So I'm like, no, like, how do you know? So, so he tells me he looked at my like skinny ass finger and compared it to his. And that's how he like figured, you know, out the size, whatever. So I was like, well, what size? So he tells me his guess. Why don't I just like make sure, like, just so we don't have to do. And really for me, I just like didn't want to ever have to take the ring off once the proposal happens, like even for it to get resized. So you see here, I actually texted him the correct size and then he called me like right away. At this point, we had like talked about kids. He doesn't have any kids. I have my son who is about to be 13 years old. I'm like, I am perfectly fine with just my one child. But then like, as things with us started to progress, I did start to get like this urge. And I'm just like, if there's anyone on this planet who should be a father, like this is that person. So we talked about it. Obviously, like we're moving in together soon. We're going to be engaged soon. And we were like, all right, let's like actively try. And if nothing happens in like 6 months, we'll see what other like fertility options there are, maybe IVF or whatever. Okay, so time is passing. We're still waiting for his house to be done. He tells me that it's almost done, but then there's issues with the cabinet and something needed to be resized or whatever. And so like basically that was going to delay us from living together for just like a little bit longer. But that little bit longer was starting to get to me. So what?
Hey, if y'all haven't by now, hit that like, comment, and subscribe.
While the actual relationship is going good and progressing, I'm getting frustrated. All right, so starting to get real now. So here's what set off me finding out. So remember I told y'all that whenever we went to DC, we would also stay at his best friend Jordan's house in Maryland. And we did that several times. And let me just say this, ladies, your man's friends will never be your friends, even if you're married. Because like I said, we stayed at Junie's best friend's house several times. We all went out together. Whenever they'd be on the phone, he'd always make sure to say hi. The whole time, obviously knowing Junie's life situation. And also knowing Junie's wife quite well. Because when he comes to Long Island, he stays at Junie's house. And then there was also Junie's best friend who he grew up with in Jamaica. Let's call that friend Jeremiah. When Junie and I were in Jamaica, we spent so much time with Jeremiah. We went to Dunn's River with Jeremiah. We had a good old time at Pier 1 drinking with Jeremiah. I loved the beef patties in Jamaica. You know, they taste different than here in New York. Whenever he came to Long Island, he asked me what I wanted and brought me a whole box of beef patties. A whole box. And then took his behind right to Junie's house to go stay where him and his wife were. Yeah. No loyalty to that woman whatsoever. So out of all the time we spent together, out of all the conversations we had, neither Jordan nor Jeremiah ever mentioned that Junie was married. We had a full conversation specifically with Jordan about Junie and I getting married. Not once did that man even flinch. Not once. Not once. It was never a like, oh, no, never slipped up. Never told me a thing. Never. All right, so back to what set this all off. So one night, I was calling Junie. He couldn't answer because he was on the phone with Jordan. And it was a long time. So when he got off the phone, he called me back. He was like, oh, we were just talking about everything, talking about life, whatever. So apparently Jordan had gotten into a new relationship, and he was basically like, you know, like, this girl, like, may be the one, you know, love that for him. He was just like talking about regular stuff they were doing, and that the new girl was going to be moving in with Jordan. Now, that conversation definitely set something off in me, because it made me think about things that should already be happening with Junie and I that just weren't happening yet. And I definitely felt a way that Jordan was doing certain things with this woman who he had pretty much recently started dating. I mean, like, it had been months, but it was nowhere close to the timeline of Junie and I. And remember, I've known Junie for years. We've been together less than the time that I've known him, but I've known him for years. And it wasn't even about comparing. It was just like, yeah, there's certain things that we should be doing. And like, mind you, this is a few days before Christmas, so it's like the year is about to end. Like, you know, patience is running out. And the timeline at this point was like, okay, for sure by the end of January, at very latest, no later than that. Even with that being said, though, my patience is running out, because like I felt like the timeline, it kept getting pushed. The reasons for the timeline getting pushed did make sense, but the fact is the timeline kept getting pushed. And every time I would bring up the fact that, like, okay, you know, what are we doing? I understand things are taking longer, but like, you know, let's compromise somehow, you know? And so the thing is that, like, every time I would start to have these conversations, it didn't matter how I approached it. I could, you know, be as nice as possible, say it in a whisper, whatever. I would always leave those conversations feeling like I did something wrong. He would always make me feel bad for bringing those things up. Now, besides that, relationship, great, right? But when I would bring that up, that's when there was that bit of like, So that's why I just kind of stopped bringing it up and like, all right, he He says this is what it is. At this point, I have no reason to not believe what he's saying because everything lines up. I'm seeing the pictures of the progress in his house. Like there's no way this man would be doing a full construction on his house if this isn't what is happening. The amount of effort and time that he put into my house, why would he do any of this if this is not what's happening? Like to the point where we have our little dog, he has his dog. He would show my son and I how to train like our little dog so that our dogs together could get along whenever he moved in. So like I had no reason to think that what we had planned was not happening. On top of the fact that he just comes off as a very like calm, trustworthy, good human. But with that being said, what he told me about Jordan definitely like stirred something. It did. Like that night I had this overwhelming feeling of just like feeling unsettled, and it would not go away. Like it was really bad, to the point where that next morning we were actually supposed to go to get brunch together, and we were going to the same place where we actually met for the first time ever in real life. Now I got so unsettled to the point where I almost physically felt like I was going to like puke. Like it was I don't know what, I just felt very, it's just like all these things started coming to the forefront of my mind, and I'm just like, wait a second, like something, I don't know, it's just something. So I sent him this text. So you can see I sent him this text literally 1:30 in the morning, and I said, don't worry about going to Toast tomorrow. That's where we were supposed to go. Like, I can't even explain how unsettled I was. It was to the point where I literally started crying. Like, alone in my room, my spirit was like truly just bothered. So the next morning, he texts me back. He says, why, what's going on? Good morning, by the way. I say good morning to him, you know, some excuse, whatever. And then he says, I'm dealing with some stuff for the house. I'll call you back. He calls me back, and World War III happened. All right, so when he called me that next morning after he got the text where I was like, you know what, forget it, don't even worry about brunch, I genuinely thought we were gonna get on this phone and I was going to be able to just express how I felt. There would be some kind of understanding, and then we'd be like, you know what, let's just go to brunch anyway. I just wanted to feel like validated and understood with my frustrations. That is not what happened, and it was quite the opposite actually. So instead of trying to internalize how I felt at all, he just like flipped it and truly just made it about how what I was saying, how that made him feel. And I was once again left feeling like because I brought this up, that I did something wrong to him, that I wronged him somehow. And again, I didn't come at him crazy or anything. I'm simply at this point just trying to express how I feel about this. Because like I said, I've brought this up before, but because of his reactions in the past, I kind of just was like, let me not. So this conversation escalated to a place it just truly never needed to go. So now the original plan was obviously for us to go to brunch, and then he was going to go to work afterwards. So he ended up having to go to work, and I'm just here. Now, throughout the day, the conversation is still dragging, is still happening, and I'm not understanding. To me, it was such a simple, like, such a simple emotion that I was just trying to convey. A very like normal emotion, and he just didn't really want to internalize it whatsoever. So the conversation is dragging. I end up just hysterical crying out of pure frustration, like what is happening right now? And the night is ending with me crying, just like I don't know how I can function with someone who can only handle like good conversations, in the sense of like if anything gets brought up, you automatically take that as like some kind of critique, and you feel the need to like blame shift, and you thinking that just because you do so much means that you're above me ever saying anything to you unless it's like a good thing or in praise. Like, everybody has things to work on. Anything can be better. And I'm just bringing up a normal concern that any woman would have in a relationship. And anytime I brought up anything of concern or anything, he just like glitched out. Like he couldn't handle it. He automatically took whatever I said as critique. Didn't matter how I approached it, if it was something that I felt I wanted to talk about. And now, mind you, I've said this over and over. We had a great relationship. This is just a few things that I'm like, you know what? Like, can we talk about this? So anyways, I'm crying. He had to go. He's at work. He eventually did call back and he's just like, Mary, like, I love you. I don't want to break up or anything. Basically, we'll figure this out. I'm exhausted. I'm just kind of like silent at that point. He's like, do you have anything to say? I'm like, not really. I'm just like exhausted. I'm going to go to bed. Basically, like, we'll talk in the morning. So we get off the phone with me thinking like, okay, you know, we'll talk about this in the morning. But with that being said, we're all right. And not only would we talk about it in the morning, we were also going to see each other because the next day was Christmas Eve. We already had plans to spend time together Christmas Eve. And then also he was going to come over for a little bit on Christmas Day. The same way he had in the past. He did like Thanksgiving and Christmas and whatever, the holidays with my family. So I go to bed. Yes, I'm upset, but you know, it is what it is for now. So I wake up the next day. It's Christmas Eve. It's a new day. And then I get this text from Junie. He texts me at 9:37 a.m. on Christmas Eve. He says, hey, are you awake? I say yes. Now, immediately I thought this was weird because every morning when he wakes up, he always sends a good morning text, like good morning before anything. And as you can see, there was none of that. So I immediately knew something was off. Obviously we were arguing the day before, so I thought it was just like, I don't know, leftovers of that. So he calls me. I pick up the phone and he breaks up with me.
And this long ass story, I would have too.
Mm-hmm. As you can imagine, I'm very upset. It didn't make sense at all. After we get off the phone, I'm obviously devastated. It wasn't making sense. All right, so we left off with him blindsiding me and breaking up with me out of nowhere on Christmas Eve. So this is what he says when he breaks up with me. And as I said, when we ended that phone call the night before Christmas Eve, I went to bed thinking we're okay. So he says he slept on it and woke up and felt like we needed to go our separate ways. And I'm just on the phone like, what? I'm like, how could you possibly go to sleep on it, and then all of a sudden you don't want to be together after all of the I love yous, after all of our plans to move in very soon, the construction on your home, you getting my ring size, like what? I'm like, how does that all change within 24 hours? So he goes, it's not about me loving you, I love you, but sometimes love just isn't enough. Huh? And then he goes, I told you about my trauma and that I don't do well with arguing, and you can't even say that you're not gonna bring those things up. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, can you say that you're not gonna bring those things up again, like argue about those things again? And I'm just like, my concerns? He's like, you can't even say you're not gonna talk about them. What? So now I'm just getting like silent at this point because what are you even saying? He's like, see, you can't even say that. And I'm just like, there's no possible way that your feelings about everything we're doing has changed within 24 hours. And at this point, I'm just like, I was just so confused and just like hurt And then I'm just like, if this is what you want to do, then that's what we'll do. If you don't want to be together anymore, we won't be together anymore. I had just cried so much the night before. I just didn't even have the energy in me to like start like crying even more or whatever. It was just like, what? Like, so we break up. I am in my kitchen, just confused, like hurt, confused, like it's Christmas Eve, like what? So I ended up doing something that I usually don't do. Usually if something happens, I kind of like sit with it on my own. I like to process things on my own. And then if I feel the need to like address it with like my friends or my mom or whatever, then I'll do that. But it's never really in real time. This, I was like, you know what? I was like, I need to talk to someone about this. So I texted my best friend. I texted her, Junie just broke up with me on Christmas Eve. She's like, yeah, okay. Because obviously she knows all about our relationship. This is just so unexpected. And like literally a few weeks before, he had just taken me, my best friend, my son, her son, all of us to the Cheesecake Factory together just a few weeks ago. So she's thinking it's a joke, like, haha, yeah, okay. Now, mind you, my best friend is the daughter of Junie's neighbor's best friend, who he never mentioned to them that I, in particular, was his girlfriend. Because again, if those dots were connected, they would have been like, what? So I call my best friend, just like, no, like he was like serious. And she's confused, like, what? Like, what, Mary? And then I'm just telling her like what he said and everything. And she was really just like, something's not right. And then she was like, honestly, like, she was like, I don't want to be insensitive to whatever, you know, is going on, anything. And I know what he said about his house and stuff, but she's like, honestly, I've been wanting to bring this up to you. Just because, yes, his excuses for why certain things aren't happening make sense. But at this point in time, it's been too long. And then she was like, do you want me to ask about him? Because, like I said, Long Island is big, but it's not that big. And Suffolk County, everybody knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And we all know each other. So she was like, do you want me to ask about him? I'm like, no, because at this time, I'm not suspecting anything like that. I'm not suspecting that it could be anything like super crazy. So then I tell my cousin. This is my first cousin. We were raised together like we're sisters. She's met Junie, all that, knows all about our relationship. She pretty much expressed the same sentiments as my best friend, but like less strongly, because this was truly just like out of nowhere. And she was just like, I don't know. She still had total faith in Junie, but she was like, So then I called the big boss, my mother. And I can be a very blunt person, but my mom is even more blunt. So I tell my mom what's happening. And mind you, she's been around Junie plenty of times. She was like, it's giving side, Mary. That's what she said to me. Now, like I said, she's blunt. But this is the first time she said anything like that to me. And I honestly was like very hurt by her even putting that in the air. Like, there's no freaking way. So fast forward, I didn't hear from him for the rest of the day, the rest of Christmas Eve. You know, I'm just putting on a brave face with my son, doing the whole cookie thing. He doesn't believe in Santa, obviously, anymore, but we still like to bake cookies. So then the next morning was Christmas. Now, I just bought my house. So this year I was hosting Christmas for my family. And Junie was supposed to be there, but obviously with us not being together, he wasn't there. So like we did presents and everything. I'm genuinely having a great time with my family, just like trying to like not focus on anything. But obviously I was still very bothered. I was still very upset. And as the Christmas day went by, that feeling, because I hadn't heard from him at all, it was just getting more intense. I really couldn't even eat on Christmas, really. So my family was at my house for a long time on Christmas. And as the day progressed, I just like, it was just really getting to me. And then I just budged and I'm like, you know what? Let me just call him. Maybe he wants to call me and he just doesn't know what to say. I don't know. So I was like, you know what? Let me just call him because the breakup was weird. It was really weird. I was like, clearly we still love each other. Like, let me just call him. I'll be the bigger person. I'll call him, see if we can work this out, see what's going on. So I did. He picks up the phone and it was basically like, Merry Christmas. Like, I miss you. You miss me. Like, do you really want to stay broken up or do you want to talk about this? And he was basically like, no, I don't want to be broken up. Yes, let's talk about this. I was like, do you want to come over today? He was like, I'm working right now, but I'll come see you tomorrow. And I'm like, all right, so are we still broken up? Like, are we together? No, we're together. We'll figure this out. So I update my best friend about like the conversation that Junie and I just had. And she's like, honestly, Mary, I still think that we should look into something because something still isn't right. And after like a little back and forth, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, okay. So out of respect for the parties involved, I'm not going to say exactly how this was found out and who she spoke to, but while she's speaking to them, I'm texting her like, what was he saying? Thinking like at the very most, it could have been like, oh, he's a jerk or whatever. So she responds to one of my texts with like a sad face. And still, I don't think, I'm not thinking anything too crazy. So, I'm waiting. She finally calls me back and she was like, Mary, she was like, he's married. And what? Like, there's no. That was truly the last thing that I genuinely went into a full panic. My heart was like beating. I felt like the room was spinning. And I'm just like, no way. Like, there is no way. I'm like, I need more confirmation. There's no way. So another phone call was made. It was confirmed again. Now I'm just like, oh my God. I'm like, I wanted to cry so bad. I think I was like too stunned to even cry. I'm like, there's no way. So I'm still on the phone with my best friend and she's like, you're gonna see him tomorrow, right? Confront him tomorrow when you see him in person. And at this point, there was no way that I could have waited any longer to ask this man, are you married? I was like, I'm sorry, I have to ask him now. So we hung up the phone and I called that man immediately. He picks up the phone, he's like, hey, what's up? I'm like, Junie, are you married? He was like, what? I'm like, I was just told that you're married. Are you married? He was like, what are you talking about? I said, Junie, I was literally just told that you are married. He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Is this why you call me? I'm like, you're telling me that you're not married? No, not married. I'm like, I asked you if you were ever married, if you are married, if anyone even thinks that they're in a relationship with you, anything. Because I don't do that. I don't mess with married men. No, absolutely not. He's like, Mary, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm at work right now. I'll call you, but I am not married. Point blank period. I am not married. So we get off the phone. Mind you, this is Christmas night. My whole family had just left and I just pretty much fall apart. Like that deep soul, like gasping for air type of cry. So I pick up the phone and call one of my aunts because I am in bad shape at this point. She picks up the phone. I am just hysterical isn't even the word. Just like, why is this happening? What did I do to make this happen? Like, what? Because at this point, there's multiple confirmations of this. Even though he's denying it, these are people that I know are not going to make this up. She's like, oh, it's okay. I'm feeling bad too because she's right next to her husband in the bed. It's Christmas. But she knows this is bad because when I tell you I don't do this, I never call anyone crying like this. And I never call people in real time with my problems. It's just not something I do. So she knew it was bad. So somehow I calmed down. She calmed me down. Somehow I went to sleep. I don't even remember falling asleep. I don't even know if I did fall asleep. That part is almost a blur, really. So it's the next day now, the day after Christmas, and I want answers. I want real answers. Now, the way Junie and I usually spoke, he always answered the phone. I called this man 3 times and he didn't answer the phone. So I'm like, okay. And then he finally texts me back. This is December 26th at 12:14. He texts me back. He says, give him a couple minutes. He just got off work at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I knew he was working Christmas night, so okay, sure. We get on the phone again, completely denying that he's married. And then he has to call me back again. Now is when I'm like, okay, clearly he's not going to tell me the truth. It's time to put this investigative journalist cap on. And that's exactly what I did. So now it's time to do a proper background check. So I go to spokio.com and I go to beenverified.com that you may have seen on MTV. That's the service they use a lot on the show Catfish. So I paid with my own money, full memberships for both sites. I search up Junie's name. I found him, made sure it was the correct person, and straight to the marriage records. Is this man married? Now, both background checks do not list that this man is married. In fact, they both say single. Now you may be like, oh, okay, he's not married. No. That's not how it works in New York. Unfortunately, in New York, marriages do not always show up on background checks, and divorces definitely don't show up because those are actually closed. And this is for cases outside of New York City. And remember, I'm on Long Island in Suffolk County. I have family, my aunts, cousins, friends married for years. I put their names in those searches just to make sure none of those marriages show up either. But I knew this man was married because, like I said, the people who verified that he was married, they have no reason to not tell the truth about that. I'm like, all right, let me put my thinking cap on a bit tighter. So I'm over on the relatives section of the background checks. And then you see people who they could possibly be associated with. You see like the house deeds and all that stuff. So I noticed that on the house, the address that I knew he lived at, I noticed that the house he said that he had purchased on his own as a single man, I see there's another name on that house. So I'm like, who is this? And that person's last name, however, was different than his name. Let's call that last name Myron. So I see this, obviously a woman's name with the last name Myron, who is also a co-purchaser or whatever on the house. But it doesn't say that they are married. Clearly it's something though. So I'm looking at the people who are associated or relatives, and I see that same Myron last name for a few people. I also see his actual family members, like his mother, his brother with his last name. So I'm like, all right, let me go to Facebook and see if I can find out who this person is who is listed on the deed loan of Junie's house. Can't find him. Nowhere to be found. So I'm like, all right. Now, Junie is not a social media user at all. He has this Instagram account that he doesn't use, And he also is not on Facebook at all. So I couldn't even go through like his follower list to see who this person was. So I'm going through the other people on the list, seeing if I could find them. They don't really have social media. So I'm like, no. Somebody has to be on the grid. There's somebody. So I see his brother. I search for his brother's name on Facebook. Nothing. I'm like, Okay. I remember that his brother got married like within the last couple of years. So I'm like, you know what? Let me search wedding registry so I can find someone who's related or something and get information through there. So I put his brother's name into Google, looking. Okay, here's his name with the Long Island wedding. This is around the year where I remember. Let me see if this is the person. So I click on the registry, see his name, see the person he was marrying. I see her name and I'm like, yeah, okay, this looks right. So go back on Facebook and I search his brother's wife's name, which would be Junie's sister-in-law. Boom. Got her. So I'm like looking through, friends, seeing if I can find something. I'm not seeing anything. So I see someone who is like liking some of her stuff. So I'm like, oh wait, they have this, I think it's this, same maiden last name or whatever. So I click that person's page and it ends up being her mother. How do I know this? It looked like the older version of her. And then in one of her pictures, she had her daughter, who was Junie's sister-in-law, and Junie's brother together for their wedding. Okay, here's another connection. Let's see what else we can find. So I'm going through her friends list, likes, all that, just trying to find something. And then I did. I see someone with that same Myron last name, right? Click on their page. Looking. Then I see a young Black woman who looks, I guess, probably around my age. I look at her name. It's her name, Myron, hyphenated Junie's last name. So I click on her page, and what do you know I find? In her header picture is a picture from 2017 of her and Junie walking down the aisle. She has on a wedding dress, he has on a tux. And he's leaning down, giving her a kiss as they're walking down the aisle, in which they clearly had just gotten married. Yeah. I've never screenshotted, saved a picture in my life so quickly as I did that one. So yeah, there's my unrefutable evidence that this man is married. And this picture's from 2017. And so this person who he clearly had gotten married to wasn't actually the person listed on the house. That was somebody else with the same last name, which I'll get to as well. But here we are, the evidence I needed. So now it's time to confront him with this unrefutable evidence. Okay, so I have this wedding picture. It's clearly him that got married. And I'm fully realizing that this man is a liar. Full-blown liar. And the extent to which this man lied to me, to everyone around me, to my son, I was like, okay. Let me go ahead and protect myself. And for me, that meant when he called back, I was definitely about to record that phone call. Because you're not about to get me caught up. You're not going to lie on me and this experience and what you did. Now, mind you, I'm still very much in shock. I'm still very upset. And at this point, I genuinely just want to know why he did all this. Like, why did he do this? And I really just wanted him to tell the truth. At this point, just tell the truth. So he calls back. I said, boop, record. He didn't know I was recording. So we're on the phone. Hi, hey, how you doing? All that. I say, Junie, like, do you love me? Yes. Yes. I say, Junie, like, are we in this together? Do you plan on putting a ring on my finger very soon? He said, yes, Mary. Like, how many times do I have to tell you? He's like, what more else do you need me to do right now? I say,
Divorce your wife.
what I need you to do right now is to just tell me the truth. He goes, I am telling you the truth, Mary. I am not married. I said, okay. So I'm like, okay, I am gonna send you something and I just need you to explain to me what this is. So while we're on the phone, I sent him the picture of himself walking down the aisle in a wedding tux, which is clearly at his wedding. I send him the picture. He gets silent. He was silent for probably like 7 seconds, and he goes, hold on. I said, okay. About,
That wasn't me.
I don't know, 7 more seconds after that, he goes, Mary, I'm not married. I said, Junior, I'm literally looking at your wedding picture. What do you mean you're not married? Then he goes, okay, I was married. I'm not married anymore, but I was married. I said, Junie, I asked you, have you ever been married? I asked you, are you married? Are you in a relationship? Have you ever been married? You told me no. And now you're telling me that you were married? He said, yeah, I did get married, but we went through it and we got divorced like right before the pandemic. I said, Junie, why didn't you tell me this? Do you know this man turned into Nicki Minaj herself? He said he came from Jamaica. He owned a couple acres, a couple fake visas because he never got his papers. No, like he literally said that. He said, I got married for my papers and I just never wanted to tell you. Dude, what? So I'm just like, why didn't you just tell me? And why would I believe that? There's a whole wedding photo. He's like, you know, when things like that happen, you have to have a whole wedding so it doesn't look like fraudulent, you know, whatever. So now, according to him, he was married at one point, but now he's divorced, right? So I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna just take your word for this. I need to see proof. I need to see something. So he's like, okay. As soon as I get up, I will go into my safe and I will send you or show you the paperwork of his divorce. So I said, okay. So we get off the phone. When I tell you, that man never called back again. And he never called because he never had any evidence that he was divorced. And baby, you will not believe what I ended up finding out. Man, I ended up finding out so much more than I even expected. So he says he got married for papers, that he paid her $45,000, that they were divorced before the pandemic. He told me he would show me the divorce papers, never calls back. So I get back in my investigative journalism bag along with my best friend. Now, what I didn't realize when I first went on Facebook and found his wife is that there was an all section. Because for the most part, her page was pretty private and I only saw the initial wedding photo in the header. Now, in the all section, I'm seeing other photos, one of them being an engagement photo. That photo was from 2015. And I'm looking through the comments. I see people saying, oh, it's been 6 years. So happy for y'all. 6 years? 2015 minus 6, 2009. And then y'all got married in 2017. Yeah, that math isn't giving you just got married for papers. There's absolutely no way that's a paper marriage. So it's clear at this point, he's lying. And if he wasn't lying about being divorced right now, he would have called me back at this point. And if they weren't still married, that woman wouldn't have her header. Even if it's from 2017, still there, that wedding photo, as her header for Facebook. She would have took it down. So it's looking like him and his wife have been together for 15 years. From 2009 to 2024 and continuing. 15 years. So I give it another 24 hours just to see maybe if he has something to say. Heard nothing. Well, I'm like, okay. But then I still felt like I'm missing something. There's something else. Because the way this man lied to my face, the lies, the amount of lies, there has to be more to this. So there are these groups on Facebook called Are We Dating the Same Man? And there is a group specifically for Long Island, for Nassau and Suffolk County. And remember, we're in Suffolk County. I'm like, okay, if he's not gonna give me the answers, I'm gonna get the answers. So on my behalf, he was posted in that group. And the photos used were directly from his work Instagram, which is public. So no one's private information was used. These pictures were public knowledge. And with this caption of saying gets into serious relationships while hiding he's married with a wife at home, lies about everything. No less than 10 minutes later, a woman responds. Then another woman responds, and she says, quote, I was just in a relationship with him from May to September. I caught him on Tinder and ended it. Another response from another woman. Inbox me, please. And this lady right here had the right idea. He's where the streets get tested, ladies. So not only is this man married with me as a serious girlfriend for over a year, not only that, he was getting into relationships with other women, one of which broke up with him because she caught him on a dating app. We were very much together from May to September. In fact, during this time, we had a whole celebration for our 1-year anniversary. In addition to those women responding, there was also another woman who responded. But this one was a little different. She says that Junie is one of her best friends, and if you know what's going on, send her a DM. And that's exactly what I did. So I'm DMing with his best friend, and she's like, what is going on? And I tell her everything. I tell her that I met him years ago on a dating app, that we've been in a serious relationship for over a year. I tell her about all the times we spent together, the trips, everything. Him being integrated into my life, my son's life, my family's life, my friend's life. And she's just like, holy. Because she says at this point, yes, Junie is her best friend, but because she's also known his wife for so long, that is one of her good friends as well. And she's like, I have to tell her. She's like, before I do though, can you send me proof of y'all together just so I can be sure before I let her know? I sent her like 20 photos, all different locations, different outfits, all everything. There's no denying that what I said is the truth of what's going on. And she was just like, holy. And she genuinely came off as just like so disgusted with his behavior. So this was nighttime. A little after that, I went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I see that I have a text from Junie. Do you know that this man had the audacity to send me a cease and desist? So before I get into the cease and desist, at this point, it's very clear that this is what this man does. And he does it with whoever. And if he's doing it the same way that he does with me, it's with no regard for anybody's health. So with that being said, I'm not going to say his full name, but I will say this. There are not very many black men who are 6'5", who are from Jamaica, who work in law enforcement in this county on Long Island. So take that for whatever it's worth. And if you've come into contact with somebody like that, you should probably get tested. I didn't. So with that being said, here is the cease and desist that he texted me. Here it starts off, and I'll send all the pages. More, and more, some demands, more, and here's the last page. Now, there's not a lawyer in this country who is going to text a cease and desist. And none of this applies to me. And for anything I've said talking about this, none of this applies either. Because for something to be slanderous or libel or whatever, it has to be untrue. And everything I've said is clearly true. So not only did he send a cease and desist, he also never apologized for anything. There was not one sorry, not one iota of acknowledgement. This man has said nothing. No conscience, no remorse, nothing. And I truly don't know what type of person behaves like this and with no remorse. And for him to be in the occupation that he's in, it's, yeah. And one of the worst parts about this, because of his occupation, he has sort of positioned himself to be a champion of the community. Someone for kids to look up to, speaking at schools and everything. Whole time, this man intentionally lied to a child, my child, for over a year, intentionally positioning himself to be part of this child's life in a very serious way, going on road trips with me and my son's best friend, to bring them like upstate to go camping in Pennsylvania, going to my son's best friend's house with them and all of us and the parents for like a kids family night, whatever, as though you're that person for my son, telling him over and over that, you know, like he'll be living here soon and this is what this life is going to be, showing my son what to do with his little dog so that Junie's dog would get along with our dog whenever he moves in. And my son will be perfectly fine, but he won't forget. He will not forget, because how dare you? Truly, how dare you? Him with my son is probably the worst part about this. Like, how dare you? And my son will be 13 soon. He'll be right. He's such a great kid, so respectful, just the best kid. He will be perfectly fine, but he won't forget. So, in addition to that, here's some other things that I learned. Him saying that he lived with his grandma. No. That, so I'm told, is actually his mother-in-law. So he lives with his wife and his mother-in-law. And that other person who was on the deed, that seems to be his mother-in-law, because it's not his wife, but they do have the same last name, maiden last name. That master's degree that he told me he had, because you know I have my master's degree, it's not looking like that exists. And for people who said like, oh, didn't you Google? Yes, I Googled. But like I said, he's in law enforcement, so he's able to scrub the internet. And again, none of this showed up on his background check in terms of him being married. So in conclusion, who knows what else this man lied about? As I go through the details and everything of like, just everything that happened, I'm just like, wow, it's crazy. So I just want to thank y'all for sticking around for this long story. I know it was long, but every detail mattered. I'll try to like go through and answer any questions that I didn't answer on my own. And like also to the women who have like messaged me or left comments that you unfortunately have experienced something similar, I hope that me being vulnerable and telling my story at the very least helps you to know that you are not alone.
What it do, everyday people, man? It's your boy PJ. Today we back with another lit video. We back in the confessional, and yes, we staying lit, big dog, man. Shout out to my everyday people who rock with me every day. Shout out to my player partner, Lucky Wheels and Deals. He keeps it lit. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to this video. Let me know how y'all think about this long ass story time in the comment section, big dog, man. Let me tell y'all what, man. Yo, I was just like, anyway, I felt like I was getting cheated on, okay? It's good that she came to the long drawn out conclusion, which really could have got her through if she would have probably just scrubbed the internet looking for a marriage certificate first, you know? I think it's getting to the point where women should be doing that. Anyway, y'all do enough. Y'all go through a nigga phone so much, why don't you just Google? You know what I'm saying? Pay for the background check, you know what I'm saying? And it seems that she keeps saying, ladies, go get checked, as if somebody has something, which is perfectly fine, I guess, if that's your, if that's your truth now. But unfortunately, this man has been going raw with a lot of people at the same time. So who knows? Everybody's saying that the wife is maybe Jamaican. She probably knows about this man too, cheating and stuff like that. So it is what it is. Now, Junie, I'm disappointed in you, Junie. But, for running away like that without giving her a real explanation and lying, like, you could have had her. You could have kept her. If you just told the truth, you probably could have kept her. At this point, all this, I would have left my wife. I mean, if I'm doing all this with another woman, there's no way he doing this with his wife. Was she locked in the cage somewhere? She don't got a phone. She ain't got something. Like, how do you get away with all this without her knowing a single thing? I find it kind of hard to believe that she just clueless out here. You know what I'm saying? I find it hard to believe that she just clueless out here. Because why? Why are you just Washington, D.C. several times? That's crazy. To imagine that somebody can go out of town so much and his wife not ask, like, not even call. Like, when y'all out of town, is his wife not calling? She not like, She not trying to pull up on him and see what's up while you out of town. She ain't got your location. That's your wife. The mama ain't talking. The mama ain't said nothing to him like, girl, this dude is gone all the time, out of town. He cheating. Of course, the wife knew. Something up with the wife. The wife just sticking with him because of whatever. If they ain't got no kids, there's no mention of a kid. No kids. So, 15 years, no kids. What are y'all thinking? She just desperate. She didn't say she was ugly. Because, who cares? I wish she would have. There's got to be something. I'm going to Google. I'm going to go to the Long Island Police Department and just look for, let me see, Long Island Police Department. I'm Google Long Island police officers and see if we can find a name. Nassau County official website. Guess you probably can't find the officers on there, but he gotta be in there. I find it hard to believe that no one knows about this. Like, him just out here willy-nilly all through this town. Oh, girl, you was getting spoke about. The gossip was running freely about you dating this married man. Oh, but they just ain't tell you. That's what it is. You dating a married man, everybody talking behind your back. You know what I'm saying? It gotta be it. That has to be it, because there's no way. There's absolutely no way that you could just go through this without nobody, not even his officer friends. I mean, you going through so many other people, and you not even knowing, like yeah. I find it hard to believe that absolutely nobody knew that this man was dating another woman, and especially as willy nilly as y'all was all out and about. I mean, look, man, I ain't gonna lie. A woman will go through everything in your past, present, and future to see if you got somebody, to see if you married. You know what I'm saying? To see if you're on a deed with somebody else. Like, a lot of this stuff is free information. They gonna be all through your stuff. So I kind of find it hard to believe that nobody knew that she was dating a married man. Somebody knew. The wife knew. This is the craziest situation. I mean, all that, he had all that time and free energy to, and just, but good thing she found out. She would have never got married. Seems like she was really hurt. Just, he was really a good guy. Outside of the fact that he's a cheater, a liar, adulterer, seems to be a pretty stand-up guy. But, of course, man, this guy don't need to be a police officer. Any man that'll go through this much to lie, to be a fraud, he don't need to be a police officer. I don't trust him. Everyday people, man, let me know what y'all think about this crazy situation in the comment section. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna holler at you later. Peace.
Day and night. For some women, it can start working in as quick as 1 week.